Chapter 5, Down Low, Too Slow. He called me at 3 p.m. the next day. I heard my evil doppelganger got loaded and possibly harassed you last night. Let me know if he crossed the line. I will track him down and kick his ass, he said when I answered the phone. Oh, I'm sure his hangover is doing that already, I replied. But thanks for the offer. It was actually kind of exciting to get a late-night drunken visit. He had some entrepreneurial plans involving being able to purchase fresh donuts without leaving one's car. Yeah. I've heard that guy is really going places. You know, Krispy Kreme already has that in some areas, I added. I did not know that. I don't think he was aware of that either. It's fascinating stuff, he said. I could tell Aaron was embarrassed, which I found reassuring. His behavior hadn't been that atrocious, but it had produced an intoxicated declaration of love, so I was willing to let it slide. He asked what my week looked like, and we made tentative plans to get together for lunch on Tuesday, and for something more on Thursday evening, provided our work schedules allowed. RG's committee was scheduled to vote on his prescription drug proposal on Wednesday, so I didn't feel confident that I'd have a social life option for most of the week, but hopefully I'd have something to celebrate by the end of it. I spent the rest of Sunday catching up on research and thumbing through an enormous book of prescription drug descriptions and prices. I tried to commit as many of the important medications as I could to memory, but didn't feel I'd been overly successful at the task. It left me with the same defeated, overwhelmed feeling I'd always gotten when I tried to read the dictionary. I really needed my learning to be in some sort of narrative format. Why couldn't Robert Ludlum write a prescription drug thriller? Perhaps it was sort of an oxymoronic request, but it would really help me out. Zelda called as I was getting ready for bed to apologize for being so judgmental. She said that she only wanted what was best for me, but was worried that she'd overstepped her bounds. I graciously told her not to worry about it and proposed that we get back to normal. I certainly wasn't going to break up with Erin per her advice, but I didn't want to break up with her either. She's my favorite telemarketer and a good friend. Monday arrived along with an email from Natalie containing a draft of the bill she felt Brayman could sell. According to her, he had signed off on it, and they were eager to begin circulating the new, more pragmatic approach. This revealed itself to be the watered-down sell-up version I had feared. It preemptively backed off a lot of the more progressive measures in anticipation of opposition. Under their revision, the bill would actually raise prescription drug premiums by as much as 25% for traditional Medicare recipients, and it wouldn't even address the issue of importing lower-cost prescription drugs from Canada and Europe. This was unacceptable. The bill was supposed to be about changing the system for the better, not compromising to the point of irrelevance. My pulse was racing by the time I finished reading her revisions. Though my initial plan had been to get RG's permission before shooting down Natalie's changes, I now felt that they required an immediate response, and RG was tied up in meetings until late afternoon. I couldn't go to Joe Noon, RG's chief of staff, as he was still on his extended business trip to Russia, so I just had to take matters into my own hands. I stomped furiously towards the Hart building, glowering at Ralph as I passed. He didn't seem to notice my intimidating stare, which only made me more incensed. By the time I made it out the door, I felt I had some pretty good lines practiced in my head. Parentheses, cowardly cop-out, and pragmatic pussyfooting, were two I kept returning to, as I had a soft spot for alliteration, close parentheses. And I was ready to face Natalie's polished armor, which was lucky, because as soon as I reached the street, I noticed her walking with an older man I didn't recognize. I hadn't planned to launch into my diatribe in front of a third party, but I felt compelled to confront Natalie as soon as we made eye contact. "Oh, hello," she said, unenthusiastically when she saw me. She turned to the man beside her. "Daddy, this is someone I work with." She didn't remember my name, which she didn't seem at all embarrassed about. "I'm Samantha." I offered my hand to Natalie's father. "Dr. Reynolds," he responded. His hand was just as manicured as his daughter's. "Samantha works with Robert Gary," Natalie continued, "the junior senator from Ohio. Senator Brayman's considering helping him out with the prescription drug benefit package he's been struggling to put together." Oh, she was the worst. "Yes, I read through the revisions you sent, and I have to say, it feels like most of the substantive stuff has been gutted. I really don't think Senator Gary's going to go for it," I said in what I felt was an impressively even tone. "Really?" Natalie replied. "I thought Gary wanted to get this bill passed. The only way to do that is to be a little less brazen and a bit more practical." I think Senator Gary agrees with me that pragmatic pussyfooting does more harm than good to the overall effort. I shot back triumphantly. Natalie merely blinked at the alliterative assault. "I'm sorry, Daddy. I didn't expect to get into a sidewalk debate during your visit," she said in a gratingly syrupy way to her father. "Samantha, could we discuss this a little later?" "Don't postpone anything on my account," her father insisted. "I've got to check in with the office anyway," he said, as he took out his cell phone and moved away. Natalie's dad looked as though he enjoyed a good dispute. Natalie, on the other hand, appeared chagrined to have to address my concerns right then and there. She sighed deeply and fixed me with her mechanical gaze. "Samantha, I know you don't believe me, but the bill you drafted has no chance of getting passed. President Pyle would never sign it. His team would defeat it before it even got to his desk. This new version makes it possible for some bipartisan support, and therefore more difficult for Pyle to dismiss. We've got to take a step-by-step approach to this issue, and I promise you it's in your best interest to go along with our line of attack. When Brayman is elected president next fall, you have my word, he will make it a priority to enact more comprehensive legislation. Until then, we need to do our best to give Americans a little taste of what's to come." She stared patiently at me for a moment, like she was waiting for my brain to catch up with hers. I understood her perfectly. She was dangling the prize of distant future help to induce us to drink Brayman's Kool-Aid and happily sign on to his game. "Now, you said you didn't think Gary would go for our version, which suggests you don't know for sure," she continued. "There's a chance he sees the bigger picture more clearly than you do. Why don't you check in with him and we'll talk later today?" She looked very martyr-like as she finished her monologue, as though it had really been a strain to walk me through everything, but she didn't mind, because she was doing it for the greater good of Brayman's candidacy. I stared defiantly back at her. "I'll do that, but I have no doubt that Senator Gary is looking at the bigger picture. I can guarantee you that he's considerably more concerned with providing relief for stressed seniors than with how well Brayman's going to do in the Iowa caucuses," I said. "Take that, you cynical witch." She smiled patronizingly at me. Well, perhaps Gary will be able to put aside any personal jealousy to allow us all to move forward on this. Oh, that was too much. R.G. was not jealous of Bremen, was he? Regardless, he shouldn't be. And the suggestion that he was by a Bremen staffer was offensive. What do you think Senator Gary might be jealous of? I heard myself saying. Bremen's shameless pandering? Or maybe his kickbacks from the health insurance industry? Believe me, I'm thrilled that Senator Gary runs a different kind of operation, and I hope we never, ever become like you. I hadn't meant to take it that far. It was almost as if some other being composed solely of my defiance and indignation had taken control of my voice. Natalie's lip curled poisonously. Oh, I don't think there's any danger of that, she hissed condescendingly. I sneezed, powerfully and unexpectedly. I didn't even have time to direct it into my hand. Where did that come from? Was my system just now picking up on the fact that I was allergic to Natalie? She recoiled and turned to rejoin her father, her high heels clicking a rhythmic retreat. I recovered from my sneeze and took stock of my recent accomplishments. Eschewed self-control and diplomacy for knee-jerk confrontation? Check. Alienated person, boss, identified as key ally? Check. Resorted to ambush, juvenile name-calling, and sneeze attacks in lieu of reasoned, mature conversation? Check, 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 and check. Not the most glowing inventory. But though my style had left something to be desired, I felt I'd been substantively in the right. I'd stood up for the integrity of R.G.'s bill, and for him, that had to count for something. Does he have 5 minutes? I asked Janet when I returned to the office. We had a briefing scheduled for that afternoon, but I felt he should know sooner about my showdown with Natalie. Janet looked doubtful. I'll call you if he does, she said pessimistically. I returned to my desk to tackle the itinerary for R.G.'s Cleveland Open meeting, but was quickly sidetracked by an email from Aaron. To Samantha Joyce, srjoyce@gary.senate.gov, from Aaron Driver, aidriver@bremen.senate.gov, subject, Roadrunner or Wile E. Coyote. Text, which do you identify with? Need to ensure we're compatible. Under other circumstances, his email could have been well received, but as things stood, it only served to remind me that Aaron worked with the horrid Natalie as part of a team that was trying to corrupt our bill. I drafted an angry response, informing him that we couldn't see each other anymore as long as he insisted on working for such terrible people, and was about to send it when his can we be adults plea rang in my head. I hesitated. Was I overreacting? Was it childish to blame him for Natalie's crimes? I deleted the message and tried a milder response. To Aaron Driver, aidriver@bremen.senate.gov, from Samantha Joyce, srjoyce@gary.senate.gov, subject, Roadrunner or Wile E. Coyote. Text, Wile E. all the way. I find the Roadrunner annoying. Wish he'd get eaten. In case you didn't know, your coworker Natalie is trying to mess with our bill and replace it with some typical bullshit. You work with awful people. I think she is actually an evil fembot and not human at all. Can you confirm or deny? I sent it off and turned to my other work. I reserved an auditorium for RG's late August meeting in Cleveland, and then alerted the local unions that it would be taking place. They always ensured a sizable turnout. I had just finished a conversation with a cantankerous fire chief who wanted to make sure that refreshments would be served at the meeting when my BlackBerry buzzed Aaron's response. To Samantha Joyce, srjoyce@gary.senate.gov. From Aaron Driver, aidriver@bremen.senate.gov. Subject, Roadrunner or Wile E. Coyote. Text, interesting. A roadrunner-sidal streak, very sexy. I'm really sorry about the bill hijinks. Rest assured that I have nothing to do with it. As for Nat, jury's still out. Have caught her plugging herself into the wall to recharge and drinking Diet WD-40, if that's a clue. That was funny and made me feel better, but I still wasn't positive that I could let Aaron completely off the hook. Just then, Janet buzzed my line. RG can see you now, but he's got to leave in 15 minutes, understand? I assured her that I did. I entered RG's office to find him highlighting a news article. I waited a moment for him to finish. I have to leave soon, he said without looking up. Yes, sir, I didn't want to interrupt, I replied. Go ahead, Samantha. If it gets too taxing for my brain to highlight a piece of paper and listen to you at the same time, I'll be sure to let you know. I wished you were in a slightly better mood to receive the news I had for him. Oh well. You probably haven't had a chance to read the revised copy of the bill Bremen's office sent over. I forwarded it to you this morning, but I know you've been too busy to... I read it. RG cut me off. Really? When did he manage that? Janet had insisted one time that he was a speed reader, but I had never believed in the existence of speed readers. Maybe it was time to convert. Okay, well, then you know the problem already. They basically gutted it. Bremen's domestic policy person seems to think these revisions improve the bill's chances, but I, of course, told her that this goes completely against. I'm going to agree to it. What? Excuse me, sir? This version does have a better shot at getting passed, he said matter-of-factly. Okay. He clearly had not sped-read it thoroughly. He'd probably inadvertently skipped over the part where they'd upheld the ban on importing drugs from Canada and effectively raised the premiums on the cost of drugs for the sickest and oldest Americans. I knew speed reading wasn't all it was cracked up to be. I realized they raised the premiums and abandoned the import proposals, but it's still a big step in the right direction. Wait a minute, he had read those parts? But, sir, isn't it worth it to fight for the better bill? I protested in alarm. RG put down his highlighter. Uh-oh. I knew I was out of line. What the hell had I been thinking? Questioning RG's judgment. Even if I disagreed with him, vocally challenging him was idiotic. I braced myself for the inevitable dressing down. I know you're disappointed, Samantha, but this won't be the end of it. We'll get this passed, and we'll try for more later. He answered very calmly and not unkindly. I didn't know what to say. I was relieved that RG hadn't lashed out at my insubordination, but I felt like my ideological rug had been pulled out from under me. RG had told me to be on my guard to protect the bill against this sort of thing, and now he was just caving. I knew that working with Bremen would result in some deal with the devil fallout, he continued. He has his own petty agendas, and he's using this bill as political leverage for the primaries. But to be honest, I expected his revisions to be much worse. His team has taken some good measures out of the bill, but they haven't added as much crap as I thought they would. So we're going to take the compromise for the sake of making progress, imperfect though it is. It's still going to help a lot of people, okay? Okay, I managed, in a half-whisper, as I stared dully at my hands. I hope you're not too disillusioned to keep working for me, Archie said, only half-jokingly. I hope so, too. I glanced up to find him looking searchingly at me. Of course not, sir. I'm just, surprised, I stammered. So, should I tell Natalie that you've signed off? I asked, feeling the lump of resistance in my throat swell dangerously large. Perhaps I wouldn't even be physically able to do such a thing. I'll just call John directly, Archie answered. At least that was nice of him. I left Archie's office and slunk back to my desk, burdened by the weight of this unwelcome development. I searched some news sites to try to get my head back in order. A headline about a new movie called Rise of the Machines seemed to have particular resonance as I contemplated the painful victory of the Bremen operation. Natalie had been right after all. Could it be true that her slick calculations made her a more effective domestic policy analyst? Was I destined for a career filled with disappointment and disillusion? I never thought Archie would back down from a fight for a better way. Never thought he'd opt for the softer, more mainstream route without stronger reservations. Had I just been naive? What was going on? The movie review suggested that human beings could still triumph in the end, so maybe there was hope. It was actually a glowing article filled with praise for the actor and director's groundbreaking work, which wasn't surprising given that the news site on which it was featured was owned by the same parent company as the movie studio. This disguised advertising tactic, though increasingly popular, never failed to rattle me, and it gave me a creepy feeling when on this same site I read a very positive article about a particular politician. Was the politician also owned by the parent company? One never knew. Ugh, I felt like I needed to take a shower to wash the day's scum off me. That feeling stayed with me for the rest of the week, despite multiple scrubbings. I felt disoriented and unsure of myself in a new, uncomfortable way. And whenever I thought about Archie's compromise, I felt disillusioned all over again. Archie's committee voted to pass the revised prescription drug benefit bill onto the consideration of the full Senate. I noted the triumph solemnly and didn't feel any urge to participate in the wild victory celebration I had previously penciled in for that night in the event things went our way. The glittery top hat, bought in anticipation, stayed firmly in the bottom drawer of my desk, and the Mardi Gras beads remained coldly undistributed. People seemed to sense I was out of sorts and avoided interaction, which only embittered me further. Aaron was the only person who attempted to cheer me up, and he was roundly punished for his bravery. I canceled our date, refused to see him, and ignored his calls and emails for several days. I didn't care if I was being immature. I just couldn't forgive him for working with Natalie and Bremen. To his credit, he was persistent. He continued to leave voicemails and started emailing me every hour, on the hour. And all of his messages were incredibly sweet and funny. I was impressed despite myself. On Wednesday, he vowed to eat nothing but fortune cookies until I agreed to see him again. His emails began to include short updates on the toll this was taking on his body, as well as his latest fortunes and how he was interpreting them as hopeful signs that he'd soon get to be with me again. He assured me that he wasn't even adding the in-bed tagline that people usually tacked on to the end of their fortunes to make them more exciting. He wanted me to know that he was a gentleman, a slowly starving gentleman. I finally relented and agreed to see him Friday evening, and as soon as I was with him again, I felt better. He was charming and entertaining and very attentive. By the end of dinner, I consented to temporarily forgive him for his association with Bremen, as long as he agreed that Bremen was a force for evil. But it was Gary who really disappointed you, Aaron pointed out. I shot him a dark look. Never mind. Okay, Bremen is Satan, absolutely. Shall we drink to it? Aaron said quickly, holding up his glass with an endearing grin. I ended up spending the weekend with him. The following week, the Senate adjourned for its August recess, though that meant they weren't in session any longer, and therefore didn't need to stick around D.C. to be present for votes. Lots of senators stayed for a while anyway, in order to work in a more focused way on particular projects. Others took family vacations or returned to their home states to campaign and reconnect with constituents. RG tried to do it all. He stuck around for a few days, then took a vacation with Jenny and the boys, and then spent the remaining time canvassing Ohio. I woke up on RG's last day in the office before his vacation with a sense of relief. Ever since his betrayal, I had maintained a respectful but mopey distance from him, parentheses which seemed to go completely unnoticed, close parentheses. And my melodramatic commitment to shunning contact was beginning to strain. His absence promised to make it much easier. I had also managed to do with Natalie entirely via electronic communication, the coward's medium. We were on civil typing terms, and though I knew I'd have to face her sooner or later, I was happy to postpone as long as email would enable me to. Aaron and I had followed up our weekend reunion with sleepovers every night. He was in my bed now, and I lay still for a while listening to his alarmingly slow breathing. My doctor had told me that, like an unhurried pulse, this was a sign of a very healthy person. She had refrained from commenting on the fact that it was such a foreign sound to me that I had called her up in a frenzied panic. I appreciated her restraint and felt proud that I was the paramour of such an in-shape stud. She agreed I was to be congratulated. My own pulse was racing as I attempted to keep my eyes closed and enjoy the peaceful moments before the alarm clock forced the start of the day. Lately, there had been additional incentive to delay the opening of my eyes. Shackleton had persisted in his death pose practicing, and I was convinced I would soon be witness to the real deal. As usual, the moment I consciously decided to keep my eyes shut, it required a Herculean effort to do so. I irrationally feared that the degree of difficulty of keeping them closed was directly proportional to the odds that Shackleton had at last succumbed. So I struggled valiantly, my face fiercely screwed into a twisted and determined mask. I heard Aaron chuckle softly. "It's okay, he's still alive," he said, as he kissed the end of my scrunched-up nose. Oh. I relaxed my face and opened my eyes slowly. Aaron was already getting dressed, and Shackleton was indeed still among the living, but more specifically, among the mossy gilled, labored swimming living, which was a distinct and doomed subset. I gotta run, baby, Aaron said as he moved remarkably lithely towards the door. Parentheses, he was in good shape. Close parentheses. I'll call you later. He smiled at me and closed the door. I sighed happily to myself, enjoying this new routine. Before I finished dressing, Aaron blackberried to remind me that it was the first day of the metro strike. I had forgotten all about it, and consequently hadn't worked out a backup commute plan. He must have anticipated this, because he included the number of a cab company to call, warning that they'd be in high demand that morning. I felt settled and taken care of until I remembered that I didn't have any cash. I went hopefully to the laundry quarter drawer, only to find a single dime staring up at me, lonesome in its out-of-place inadequacy. Wow, I really had no money. Though I was fairly messy in some ways, I was not one of those people who'd stumble across forgotten cash in pant or jacket pockets, so I didn't even attempt to forage for surprise stashes. The only bills I ever discovered unexpectedly were misplaced, unpaid ones. I did some quick calculations. I had 20 minutes to get into the office. That wasn't enough time to walk. That wasn't even enough time to run. I didn't own a scooter or a bike or anything like that. Except, wait a minute, yes I did. I own rollerblades. 15 minutes later, I was decked out in knee pads, elbow pads, hand guards, and a helmet as I haltingly weaved my way down Massachusetts Avenue, my briefcase strapped over my shoulders like a backpack. It was already a muggy 99 degrees, and I was quickly drenched in sweat. I concentrated intensely because I was unskilled to the point that any tiny crack could send me flying. I tried to ignore the yells as I wobbled past a construction site. They didn't sound like the normal catcalls. These sounded more mocking. I had neither the time nor balance to retaliate, and so I pressed onward. I was rolling unsteadily past the Russell Building driveway when a squirrel raced across my path, sprinting for dear life towards a nearby tree. I swerved to avoid it, righting myself just in time to get a close-up of a bike courier taking me out. I went down hard on my side, one of the only places not protected by padding. My handguard scraped along the concrete as I rolled violently to a crumpled stop in the middle of a sticky puddle formed by a dropped and melting ice cream cone. Was I dead? I looked up at the little crowd of people who'd quickly assembled. Did I wish I was? The bike courier had stopped long enough to untwist his wheel before sprinting off. I had just been one more obstacle to his frenetic efficiency. "Are you okay?" a woman asked as she checked her pager. "Yeah, thanks, I think so." She nodded without looking up and moved off. Just as I felt the ice cream puddle ooze through the fabric of my shirt, I thought I caught a glimpse of a familiar face on the edge of the now thinning throng of spectators. Was that Clark Kent? It was hard to tell with my hair still flung across my eyes. I could sense that most of the crowd seemed a little disappointed it hadn't been a more serious accident, something they could authoritatively report on around the water cooler. But the man who looked like the Clark Kent reporter I'd attacked at the hearing seemed more bewildered and concerned. Oh gosh, if that really was him, then he must consider me one of the clumsiest people on the planet, and at this point a genuine threat to public safety. At any rate, he was now moving off along with the others. I winced as I gathered myself together. After cleaning up as best as I could, I changed into my work shoes and limped inside. Ralph looked alarmed at my roughed-up appearance. "Were you mugged?" he asked, his hand moving to his holster as he scanned the horizon for perps. Was he really concerned or just eager for some action? I was too defeated to investigate, so I just shook my head and trudged through the checkpoint. "Do you know you look like you were?" Ralph called after me. I ignored him. When I got to my desk, Mark Herbert was waiting for me with a bottle of aspirin. "I saw you outside when you..." He made a tumbling movement with his arms and then slapped his hands together to simulate a spectacular crash. "And, I thought you might need some of this." He wiggled the aspirin bottle and looked down at the floor. "Are you okay?" "Thanks, Mark. That's really nice. I'm fine." "Oh, good. Well, let me know if I can get you some ice or something," he said shyly as he walked off. Down the hall, I saw Mona quickly disappear. Behind her desk in a post-eavesdropped retreat. Aaron called to check that I'd made it to work okay. I informed him I had rollerbladed without going into any unnecessary details. He called me adventurous and said he looked forward to massaging any sore muscles later. I willed the swelling in my hip to reduce to a more alluring lump. RG blackberried me late afternoon to ask for copies of preliminary briefings on his open meetings. Apparently he wanted to take them with him on vacation. The problem was I hadn't prepared any. I assumed he wouldn't be working during his vacation, a stupid assumption in retrospect, and had planned on typing them up the week he was away. I fought back the surge of panic and rushed to Janet for advice. "Well, he's not scheduled to fly out till 11 tomorrow morning, so..." she offered skeptically. "So if I get it done before then, I could have it messengered to him?" I finished. "I guess so, technically, if that's okay with him." I was pretty sure she wasn't going to ask him for me. I knocked on his door. "Yep," he said distractedly as I stuck my head in. "Oh, do you have those briefings for me?" I wished ardently that I did, but that didn't get me far. "Actually, sir, I've just gotten some updates I wanted to incorporate into them. Could I get them to you first thing in the morning?" RG looked briefly annoyed, but then nodded his head. Fine. "Great." I started to turn back around. "Oh, I almost forgot," he interrupted me. "I have something for you." He waved me farther into his office as he fished around in his briefcase. "I came across this at home and thought you might like it. Jenny and I have 2 copies. He handed me a record album titled Blind Blake's Bad Feeling Blues that featured a photo of a depressed-looking blues singer. Perhaps my moping hadn't been so unnoticeable after all. RG had a slight smile on his face when I looked back up at him. Blind Blake's helped me through some crises of confidence in the past, and I figured you might want to check him out. It wasn't quite an apology, but RG was certainly acknowledging the distress he'd caused me. His manner was compassionate in a wise, removed way, like he felt my pain, but considered it inevitable and maybe even necessary and instructive. "Thank you, sir." I managed to say, feeling genuine gratitude. I'm sorry I've been a little out of it lately. Just do your job, Samantha. I hired you because you care about the same things I do. And if you stick with me, you'll have a chance to enact some real change. I'm not going to be the junior senator from Ohio forever, you know. Blind Blake and I have got some other plans. Understand? I thought I did. RG had been considered an up-and-comer to watch ever since his arrival in D.C. Certainly not to the extent Bremen had, but still, RG's potential hadn't gone unnoticed. His name had even been bandied about during the Sunday talk shows, discussions of possible presidential candidates last year. Most people assumed that he'd skip this campaign cycle because the Bremen machine looked so invincible. There was no question that Bremen had begun planning for this run over a decade ago, whereas RG had spent his time striving to do the best he could by his constituents. Was RG jealous that he hadn't laid the same groundwork for greater glory? I hope not. Yes, sir. I'm honored to be working for you, sir. Great. See you in Cleveland. I carried Blind Blake back to my desk with me, feeling considerably lighter. I still didn't agree with RG's compromise on the prescription drug benefit bill, but I did believe in his essential goodness and commitment to service. He was one of the only people I'd come across who could make ambition sound like sacrifice, which for genuine public servants it truly was. RG wasn't in it primarily for himself, but he was in it, and I hoped for the sake of a lot of the causes I believed in, that he'd go far. The realization that I had at least 7 hours of work ahead of me, and it was already the end of the day, completed my sense of a restoration of order. I sighed contentedly as I guzzled my coffee. All was right with my world once more. At 8:30, when I was a sixth of the way through the briefings I needed to finish for RG, Aaron blackberried. To Samantha Joyce, srjoyce@gary.senate.gov. From Aaron Driver, aidriver@bremen.senate.gov. Subject, Sexy Senorita. Text, finally finished for tonight. I'm about to consume ungodly amounts of margaritas and chips. Up for a little south of the border fun? And before that, would you like to join me for Mexican food? After blushing deeply and cursing the fact that I couldn't sign on to Aaron's plan, I called to inform him of my sad fate. You're going to be there all night? He asked incredulously. For a large portion of it, I answered regretfully. Wow. Okay, then I'll come visit you later. And Sammy? Yes. Natalie told me you had a nasty crash this morning. I guess she witnessed it. You okay? Other than hating Natalie with a white-hot passion, I supposed I was fine. Oh, yeah, just a couple scrapes and bruises. They make me look tough. Alright, you sexy beast. See you later. See you later was how we'd been signing off lately. Aaron hadn't repeated his drunken declaration of love for me since the bachelor party episode, but I felt confident that he'd eventually express it again, maybe even in the sober light of day. By 10 o'clock, everyone in the office had left. By 11, I was jittery from my steady intake of caffeine. At midnight, I listened to some John Bon Jovi for motivation. At 1 o'clock, I ate a power bar and airbox for 5 minutes. At 2:45, I was 20 minutes from finally finishing when Aaron showed up. He smelled of tequila and was carrying a large package from Sport Authority. For me? I asked. For me, actually, but you're involved. You almost done? He asked in a happy, drunken way. He seemed very proud of himself. As I finished up, he began unwrapping his parcel. He'd evidently bought himself a pair of rollerblades sometime during the course of the margarita-fueled night, and he appeared to be thrilled with his purchase. I readied the briefings for an early morning delivery and watched him try on his new footwear out of the corner of my eye. Do you know how to rollerblade? I asked, because it's actually quite difficult. I was hoping you'd teach me, he answered. He convinced me to change into my pair with some, you gotta get right back on the horse logic, and then stared me towards the office door. I've got to get my stuff, I protested. No, you don't. We're going to warm up here, he answered. Did he mean inside the Russell Senate building? Really? He really did. We spent the next hour gliding down the long, smooth marble halls that ran the length and width of the building, our wheels making a gentle whirring sound as we flew along. I had walked these halls for over a year, but the quiet darkness of the early Saturday hour transformed them into invitingly mysterious terrain, devoid of pedestrian traffic and polished to crackless perfection. The floors were slick and inviting. We created our own breeze as we picked up speed and wiped away the hair that blew into my eyes. I felt speedy and slightly out of control, and wondered how much he was supporting me. He had either done this before, or he was a natural. We had an unspoken agreement to stay silent as we bladed, in an effort to evade detection from the Capitol Police Station 3 floors below. Any noise echoed loudly in the empty halls, and in our silence, we attuned ourselves to the building's sleepy creaks and pipe whispers. I felt I was exploring the place more slyly and intimately as we soared along. It had always seemed a giant, impersonal thing, a power factory unconcerned with my particular place or pace. Yet in that moment, and for the first time, I felt faster than it, like I could chart a course and glimpse its secrets before it heard my buzzing and swatted me down with its imposing inertia. Maybe this place was beatable after all. Maybe I was learning the ropes just by listening. Aaron and I returned to RG's office and collapsed on the couch in the reception area. I felt an urge to share my exhilarating new sense of direction with him, but before I could sort out how to articulate it, he was on top of me, kissing my neck. Not here, I whispered, as he pawed at my clothing. Why not? There aren't any cameras. It just feels wrong, I tried to explain. Come on. Doing it in one of these offices is a huge high. Trust me. It would have been tough for him to say something that would have made me less inclined to sleep with him in the near future. Why did guys ever think it was a wise or prudent thing to allude to past sexual escapades with other women? Whether it was inadvertent or not, it was certainly idiotic. This was an egregious offense, almost as bad as when a college boyfriend had attempted to spice up our short-lived romance by suggesting I get some blowjob tips from his ex-girlfriend. What was wrong with these people? I glowered at Aaron in the darkness. Unaware or unfazed, he stuck his tongue in my ear and pushed him away. What? What's wrong? He asked in innocent confusion. I don't want to know the particulars of all the sex you've had before me, and I certainly have no desire to recreate any fondly remembered scenarios, okay? I hissed dangerously. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Calm down, baby. I'm sorry. I didn't realize what I was saying. You're taking it the wrong way. Then how am I supposed to take it? As he sat there insisting on the harmlessness of his intentions, a reel of unwelcome images came cascading into my mind's eye. There was Erin with another woman. There, he was stripping her clothes off. I couldn't seem to stop the tape. And tragically, the female star of my mental torture was achingly gorgeous. I also knew instinctively that she had broken up with Erin and that he still pined for her. Would she want him back? Did she ever call him? Did she live or work nearby? These are all the questions I had zero desire to entertain, but I seemed to have little say in the matter. Why wouldn't my brain listen to me? Okay, it's fine. I cut him off. Let's just go home. I gathered my things, and we had a decidedly less romantic rollerblade back to his place. We managed to actually trudge with our skates on, which takes a considerable commitment to a bad mood. I felt like giving up and continuing to my apartment to spend the night alone, but I was irrationally concerned that such a move might drive Erin to call that horrible other woman and rekindle their romance. So I stayed in all my exhausted, pouty glory. Erin was acting slightly cowed, which, though appreciated, wasn't that sexy. We exchanged hellos with his roommate, Mike, who was watching Top Secret in the living room and building some sort of beer can pyramid, and went quickly to sleep. I got up early the next morning to ensure the safe delivery of RG's briefings. On my way back to my place after tending to them, Erin called me to tell me he had to leave last minute on an overnight New Hampshire trip with Raymond. I hadn't yet forgiven him for his having dated anyone before me, but I was still distressed at his imminent departure. He said he'd call from the road. A dozen roses greeted me upon my arrival home. The note read, Sammy, no one and nothing compares to you. Love, Erin. This produced two delightful effects. One, Sinead O'Connor's song played on a loop inside my head for the rest of the day, negating the need for headphones and an iPod as I went about my chores. Two, I had further proof that Erin did in fact love me, whether or not he chose to verbally express his devotion. Later that night, when Sinead finally petered out, I retrieved a dusty record player from underneath my bed and broke out Blind Blake's Bad Feeling Blues. It was some serious music, unlike anything I'd ever heard. Blind Blake's voice dripped with disillusioned heartache. His chords seemed to emanate from abysmal depths. I followed along with my eyes closed and drifted off to sleep, feeling like maybe I didn't have it so bad after all.